Hello? Hello, this is the President. Hello, this is the President of the United States. Who is this? Is it you again?
Look behind you.
This is my private line. How did you get through?
They're everywhere. All the time. We see them every day. But you have to look behind you.
There is nothing behind me. How did you get this number?
The spaceman told me.
What spaceman?
It doesn't matter. I'm telling you about monsters. Please, you must look behind you.
Young lady, there are no monsters in the Oval Office.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
the loudspeaker spoke up and said,
Wait, Jimmy.
give up, give up, give up, give up, give up.
Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy. Wait, Jimmy.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. I know it's been said many times on this program, but, as we edge closer to what we call the future, and every day we near it, it's the inevitable. We have to say to ourselves, what is coming? And what is coming is a technological changeover. It's almost like, everything that you thought you knew in the past is going to change. And yes, there are going to be people that aren't going to stand for it. They're not going to be a part of it. They're going to break away. They're going to rebel, and they're going to say no. And of course, that is something that sounds uncomfortable to a lot of people that think that everything's going to go as planned. But it's not going to go as planned. In fact, there have been a number of provisions, documents, parameters, things of that nature that have been proposed for some time, and there are goals that need to be met, and when those goals are met, they move on to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and it's the enemy after next, after next, after next, after next, and the crusades are the same that go on and on and on and on and on. And so, tonight, I wanted to acquaint you with Deborah Tavares, who is an activist and a reporter who I had the pleasure of meeting at a conspiracy conference 2 years ago. She's also been involved with being an activist against things like the Bohemian Grove meetings and several other things where she has been actually interviewed. And there is a new video out right now that has been put out by Bill Coons, who I have worked with as well, who is an activist who has actually done videos or actually created videos of me and put them online. But she is online now with her video reporting about future strategic warfare issues that they're proposing for 2025, but there are many other things to cover as we prepare to get into this strategic issues and what is coming. So without further ado, we go to Deborah Tavares. Hi, Deborah. You're on Ground Zero.
Well, thank you so much, Clyde, for having me on tonight. And absolutely, I first want to shout out my website so that everybody can either get online and check out some of the material we'll be covering this evening, and or certainly take note and go to stopthecrime.net. stopthecrime.net. We're running a number of websites, as you know, Clyde, including refusesmartmeters.com. That was our original refusesmartmeters.com website. We now have a sister site that is smartmetersmurder.com, and that's exactly what they do. We also have toxicsky.org and toxicdrinkingwater.org. What I'd like to do, Clyde, is go into some of the source documents that we have posted on stopthecrime.net. And I would recommend that everybody download these documents, print them out, and have them at their fingertips, because we really don't know how long we will have the opportunity to have these radio programs and to have an internet based on the madness that is escalating every single day.
Also based on the madness that you've uncovered with some of the documents that you have been talking about. And I want to kind of, it's kind of, I guess, important that we realize that a lot of the documentation and what I call these parameters or these approximations have been going on we go all the way back to the 1960s with the Iron Mountain Report. Am I correct?
Well, you're exactly right. In fact, the Iron Mountain Report is up on StopTheCrime.net. We have it in several formats. I would recommend that people watch it as a documentary. We did transcribe that documentary because people were telling me that they got so engrossed with taking notes that they were pausing it. Well, this way they can download the transcribed version of the documentary and highlight it as they go through the Iron Mountain Report. And let's just kind of start with what the Iron Mountain Report lays out.
I would love that, because I think a lot of people are unaware of what the Iron Mountain Report is, and I think that to some of them it's just Chinese and gibberish and they don't understand it. So what is the Iron Mountain Report, Deborah?
Well, it is a report. It is an agenda that was put forth in the 60s under John F. Kennedy's administration. And there were experts that were commissioned to examine what the United States would look like should we transition out of a war economy and war reality into a golden age of peace. Now, peace in the terms of this report is anything but peace. Peace is the description by the international bankers, the Luciferian, the global elite, whatever you want to call them, Clyde. Peace to them is for their sovereignty, and that would mean total enslavement of all of the lower class, which is all of us.
Right.
And what they want is an absolute totalitarian enslavement of all of us, and total oppression through technologies. And they want a new world order. It's a system that recognizes, of course, no limits of authority, with forced control over every aspect of our public and private lives, without regard for ethics, morality, or life itself. And these documents reveal the extent in which we are nothing more than cattle, jellyfish brains, as they call us, and cannon fodder. And the New World Order, as you so well know, controls the media, the politics, economy, speech, and engages in widespread use of propaganda campaigns and total surveillance.
Psychological operations that they put on the American people, and the American people fall for these things, and they go right along with the programs that they approximate.
Absolutely. Well, they're distracted under the guise of all of the propaganda and misinformation. And the way that this system stays in its political power is through mass terror. And that is a very important component to enslaving us emotionally. And mass terror and propaganda, or they call it make-believe. So the program tonight is going to empower everyone that's listening to go to the source documents and find out for themselves what the Luciferian banking cartel says in their own words. And what is so fascinating is that they release documents for us to see. This is how they transmit information. They just think we're all too stupid to read it, and they keep us so distracted around things that have little or insignificant to the realities that they're creating for us. And they laugh in these documents at our inability to read or understand what they're writing about. The Iron Mountain Report is very, very significant. It took a number of years for it to be completed, and when it was completed, John F. Kennedy had already been assassinated, and Johnson was president. And after he reviewed that agenda, he said because of the content, it is not to be released to the people. A whistleblower released it. The government said it was a hoax because it was so sci-fi and so out there back in 1966 and 1967. People bought the idea that it had to be a hoax because the Iron Mountain talked about the fact that it was going to absolutely take down our Constitution. And it was a document of treason couched in titles and words. People just could not accept the reality of this report. And it talked about how the handling of men, women, and babies on the basis of herd animal management without regard to morality. People weren't used to hearing that. They thought they lived in the United States. Well, this came out in the 60s, and at this moment I want to clarify something that's very, very important, Clyde. It's very important for everybody to understand that on October 21st of 1945, the United States became a charter member of the United Nations, and we had to relinquish our sovereignty in order to become a charter member of the UN, and we did. Therefore, we have not had sovereignty. We have not had a republic. We are no longer under law, and we are in a matrix under a false pretense, and we have an illegal system, illegal legal system, and we're under no laws. We're under the laws that are stated in these documents. And so the Iron Mountain report talked about how war was required, that it was a political stabilizer, that war was the glue that holds nations together and rallies the people to make sacrifices so that the elites can build up massive war machines. And we'll talk about that in the NASA war plan.
I would like to also, when we get back after the break, I'd like to go down some specific points of the Iron Mountain report. And I remember Johnson had said that in order for all these things to take place, and this is back in it started in 1966, he said it would take at least 40 some odd years for any of these to be implemented totally. And I was noticing, and I've read the Iron Mountain report, that most of what has been talked about, point by point, actually, from the time it was conceived to about the year 2006 or 2004 or whenever, we started to see all these things being implemented in government.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, so I want to discuss that with you coming up. Deborah Tavares is my guest tonight on Ground Zero, activist and reporter. She has a lot of things to talk to you about, especially with future strategic issues, and a number of documents that she's been looking over and actually demonstrating the parameters in which we will be placed in the future. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL. FM News 101 KXL.
Everyone is in on the secrets, and big things are being planned. Call Clyde Lewis now. Ground Zero.
Reporter and activist Deborah Tavares is my guest tonight on Ground Zero. We were earlier talking about the Iron Mountain report going back in time to the 1960s, the Kennedy administration through the Johnson administration, provisions and approximations for a future that were put together by a group of elitists that wanted to see a type of peace where they would have control of the resources. And there were several points that they put in the Iron Mountain report that were kept from the American people, but then a whistleblower decided to reveal them. And I would like, before we go to the next segment, some of the key points that were proposed back in the 1960s that we're now seeing being implemented in our government now. Deborah, go ahead.
Absolutely. The Iron Mountain report talks about taking away not only the Constitution, but all private property rights and relocating us into human settlement zones, house-to-house search and seizures. It talks about why zip codes were set up as war identification zones. It talks about the territories being created in the United States and the fact that all of us are now noticing the regionalism that's coming into our cities. We're being converted. In fact, all of our cities have agreed to UN policies. All cities have signed on through their planning department climate action plans. If you want to verify this with your city, call your planning director and find out if you have a climate action plan in place. This is all based on the false science that the Iron Mountain report said they would create. They would invent the fear and they would create mass pollution. They would deforest us. They would do pollution of our water and air. in order to create global warming. And that is what climate change is. It is a created false reality, and they said they would do it in the Iron Mountain report. They needed to create a fear, a substitute for war, and create a fear that was so bonding by the global society. It had to be credible. It had to lie. Credibility had to lie at the heart of the problem that they were inventing. And so they created mass pollution. They are intentionally polluting the planet to create the fear of global warming and to seize everything, because as we are being told, we have to use less water, we have to use less stuff. This is all a lie to seize control of not only the food supply, the energy supply, all our private property rights, everything. Now, private property rights do not only include land. We're talking about your physical bodies. They want control of everything. In the Iron Mountain report, they talked about UNESCO and how it would take over our school system, and it has. We have Common Core curriculum being implemented this fall in most schools from kindergarten through 12th grade.
And Common Core is where they're monitoring the responses of your children and documenting them, right?
Absolutely, and they're not going to be teaching cursive handwriting any longer, which is going to cause the inability to think, because when you're writing in cursive, your right and left brain neurons fire. And we won't be able to read our historical documents because they were all in cursive. They are rewriting our corporate history right now. Everything will be based on Wi-Fi and computers, which, of course, Wi-Fi, all the wireless is dicing and slicing the DNA, and in children it's dicing and slicing the DNA. And I'm going to add this in just right now because we're talking about Wi-Fi. But Wi-Fi will damage our children's mitochondria, the DNA, and of their children and their children's children and their children. As long as there's a female line, you can have this genetic damage. So by putting Wi-Fi in school classrooms, what you're actually doing is sentencing 57% of our children to some form of birth defect forever. Forever. Common Core curriculum is a new dumbed-down international education program that's required to be taught to all schools across America starting this year. And Bill Gates Foundation is providing funding and to incorporate computers in the classrooms with Wi-Fi.
So what we're looking at is we're looking at how these electronic, I guess you could say, the electronic warfare or the silent weapons are being implemented, all beginning with the parameters that were set aside that would guarantee, in the Iron Mountain report, social control that would actually, with the gradual implementation of a failed economy, failed sovereign government, external enemies of the state, racial clashes, racial divides, religion abolishment through the demonization of churches, like sex scandals and things like that, the Catholic faith, creating a space menace, which is another thing they talked about. And you also brought up again the environmental threat that would be under the control of the government, which would be actually weather problems and climate problems and the fear that the planet will be forced to near extinction because of these problems. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, Clyde, I just was reading an article where the insurance companies in the state of California now are going to evaluate expanding their coverage premiums based on increased sea levels, as sea level rise due to global warming. Of course, this is all a hoax. This is how they're collapsing everything. Property owners simply are not going to be able to continue paying for their properties with all of these insidious taxes across the board. Right now, they're taking a global inventory of every single thing so that they can tax and monitor everything. So the war that they're doing, the war is on Americans, American values, and everything that was constitutional is now being thrown aside because of parameters that were first set in the 60s and have been carried throughout well into now. And of course, the document that you're going to be talking about that was just uncovered from 2001 discussing the silent weapons that they are going to be using to not only curtail any type of subversion, but also to depopulate the planet. And we're going to talk about that coming up, Deborah, so be ready for that, okay?
Yes.
All right, Deborah Tavares with us tonight on Ground Zero. A fascinating report. She's uncovered some documents, unraveling, at least revealing the report from Iron Mountain from the 1960s. And I said before, this was actually there to dismantle the U.S. government, to propose all types of strange events that they could use to bring us together under a world order so that we would surrender our sovereignty, to destroy the Constitution, and to bring about changes, and the war would be declared against American values. That's the thing that the future holds now. 888-673-3700. We'll be right back with more. Keep it here on Ground Zero.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
We are looking at a farce that is being played with the values, the traditions, and the laws of the United States. He has declared war on those values.
Original Constitution, I think it is an imperfect document, and I think it is a document that reflects some deep flaws in American culture, the colonial culture nascent at that time. I think we can say that the Constitution reflected an enormous blind spot in this culture, and that the framers had that same blind spot. It also reflected the fundamental flaw of this country.
I have two words for you: predator drones. When I'm president, one of the first things I'm going to do is call in my attorney general and say to him or her, I want you to review every executive order that's been issued by George Bush.
What the intelligence community is doing is looking at phone numbers and durations of calls.
There are Republican senators as well as Democratic senators that recognize that it's plain wrong.
Every member of Congress has been briefed on this program. These are programs that have been authorized by broad bipartisan majorities repeatedly since 2006. And I think it's interesting that there's some folks on the left, but also some folks on the right who are now worried about it, who weren't very worried about it when it was a Republican president.
As for our common defense, we reject as false the choice between our safety and our ideals.
You can't have 100% security and also then have 100% privacy.
We need to find a way forward to make sure that we can stop terrorists while protecting privacy and liberty of innocent Americans.
You can complain about Big Brother, but when you actually look at the details, then I think we've struck the right balance.
You heard it from the president himself. They've struck the balance with Big Brother. Finding ways to get rid of American sovereignty, finding ways to dismantle the democracy. As Jimmy Carter said, there's no real democracy that is backing the republic now. It's gone now. So tonight, Deborah Tavares is with us to talk about how all of these approximation parameters have been in the planning since the 1960s. In fact, with the Iron Mountain Report and other documents that she now is revealing to the public, it's important that we hear what the future holds. And so Deborah's with us again. Thank you for being on Ground Zero tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Clyde. At this point, I want to jump into an extremely important map, and this is one of the ways in which they are stealing our private property, because people are observing across the nation that farmers and ranchers are being set upon by the Fish and Game, by the U.S. Forestry. They're being fined and regulated and penalized. Right now, what the USDA is doing with the census forms that they sent out to all the farms and ranches nationwide, this is a global food inventory. This is so they can see what their stuff is, not our stuff. This is in process of global domination of the food supply. We're finding that now in Northern California, where there are a number of organic apple orchards, that the USDA has requested the insurance companies to come through and GPS apple trees on people's private properties. So this is happening. This is a absolute massive data collection right now. What we must do is not comply. Just like we cannot comply with the smart meters, we must refuse the smart meters. You must not accept a biohazard on your home. But I want to talk real quickly, Clyde, about the Wildlands Project map that we do have up on our website, stopthecrime.net. This map is critical for everyone to go look at and see. It is a map of the United States. It is mandated by the United Nations. It is a biodiversity treaty that we signed on to. It's a forced transformation and relocation of all Americans and cities to comply with environmental policies and reduction of CO2 emissions, all based on fraudulent, false science. This moment, I want to just say quickly, there's another very, very important document that we won't really cover this evening, Clyde, but everyone needs to also understand what the New World Order Exposed 1969 by an insider is about. And they talk about the falsified science, and they talk about the indoctrination that would be set up in our schools and longer times in the classrooms, and children would learn less. But getting back to the Wildlands map, you will see where human access is denied. You will see the corridors of reservations where no humans will be able to get into those properties. This is why we're seeing massive collapses of our road system, where they're not coming in and maintaining the roads. Why should they? Our roads are not going to need to take us where they took us before. This is why we're not getting the upkeep required to access areas. This is why we're seeing campsites and campgrounds all over the country closing down. This is all part of the property taking by the global elite. There are a number of very, very influential and very wealthy people, including the Turner Foundation, who is behind the Wildlands Project. In fact, I spoke with Ted Turner a little over a year ago. People can listen to the recounting of that interview on YouTube under Ted the Terrible Turner. But I want to say that it shows, the map shows where there are corridors where no humans will be allowed, buffer zones that will be highly regulated use for humans, and we will be forced into designated settlement reservations. That's what this is called, just like Indian reservations. And you will see this on that Wildlands Project map. It's very important to understand what is behind this map. They say that all life, human and non-human, has equal value. Resource consumption above what is needed to supply vital human needs is immoral. Human population must be reduced. Western civilization must radically change present economic, technological, and ideological structures. This is what is behind the relocation of the United States population. They are rewilding the United States to a pre-Columbian reality. This is what you'll see in the movie The Hunger Games.
Is this why they're planning on moving a lot of the government facilities and much of the government to Denver rather than keeping it in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I can't speak to that. That's probably where they're going to set up the New World Order, the One World Government. But I can tell you that right now they're relocating all of us. And we're finding it couched in many words, Clyde, smart communities. What we're seeing is our cities are setting up what they call preferred development zones, where they're saying this is where the required development should be focused. They want development. They want multiple family, stack and pack, mixed-use housing and commercial right next to transportation and freeways, right near freeways that have the highest levels of unhealthy air. You don't want people living near those types of circumstances, but this is what they're doing right now here in Northern California. They are gathering up 108 cities into one Bay Area. They're calling it One Bay Area. Very important. When you see the movie The Hunger Games, you hear them talk about districts. Well, they had 12 districts in the Hunger Games, but the reality for us is 10 districts. The Iron Mountain report speaks to that as well. They're delocalizing our ability to have any conversations with our local government. And that is what is happening. This is underway right now. It's also very, very important for me to say, too, that the smart grid infrastructure is intended to only last for 20 years. According to industry documents, that's going to be until about the year 2030. People ask, well, why? Well, simply because all of the power lines, all the infrastructure that's currently set up is simply not going to need to go where it is going now because they're resettling us. And I found another very, very disturbing project that's in the making. It's called the Walker Lake Dome Project, and it is a project that they are under construction or near construction. It's going to enclose major U.S. cities. It's a shield, and it is being built right now in Lassen County in Northern California. And it's a dome that's going to be constructed over an existing 2,000 population of the town in Lassen. And it's the proving ground for technology that will one day enclose major U.S. cities, especially those that are prone to weather-related disasters such as tornadoes and hurricanes. And it has a clear protective dome. The structure and material is believed to be capable to resist against Category 5 hurricanes. So keep in mind, this is all part of the global warming climate scare. They're going to have us moving into domes, and because we're so frightened of hurricanes and all of the wicked weather that we've been experiencing, that is all weaponized.
So that television program that they're airing right now, that Stephen King television show about being under the dome, is predictive programming.
Absolutely. That is why It's so important as we go through this conversation tonight that people understand what we're seeing in Hollywood. Hollywood, of course, as you know, Hollywood is a wizard's cane that was set up by the powers that be to create predictive programming. Very important for people to go and watch The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. And the reason I'm bringing that up right now is because you will see what is in store for us that was told us way back then. You will see the levels of mind control that occurred and was told us then. Also watch the movie Soylent Green. Very, very important. Watch that after you watch the Iron Mountain YouTube on StopTheCrime.net.
Now, we got to point out that H.G. Wells, of course, was part of the Fabian socialist movement that was on the inside of making plans for the future and to actually propose future ideals. He was a futurist, and that many of the things that he has talked about in his films, actually his books and then later the films, have come to pass.
That's absolutely right. In fact, watch, after everybody watches the Iron Mountain documentary on StopTheCrime.net, then I would urge everyone to go and watch Soylent Green. That, of course, came on the heels of the Iron Mountain report just a few years later, after the Iron Mountain. Of course, Soylent Green is about consuming humans. They're processed into biscuits. Well, we have Cinemix. I know we spoke about that sometime back when I was last on your show. Cinemix, Senomyx. They're already processing fetal tissue and adding that to our food supply. Go to StopTheCrime.net and download the flyer on Cinemix, Senomyx. This is Soylent Green now, in modern day reality now, in the 21st century. And you will read all of the different manufacturers that are all global banker manufacturing and companies that are putting, they're creating cannibalism through our food supply. This increases our anger. This is horrific. And, of course, it's something that they enjoy doing because they are Luciferian, they're evil, they have satanic ritualistic behaviors where they sacrifice small children. The entire basis is all based on Dope Inc., the drug cartel, and on trafficking and pedophilia and child sacrifice.
It definitely is widespread, and there are a lot of reports about that. I want to, after the break, I want to come and I want to get straight into the Dennis Bushnell chief NASA scientist document called The Future Strategic Issues of Future Warfare in 2025.
I'd like to say a couple of things about the Iron Mountain, the Silent Weapons document before we leap into the NASA war.
Okay, I would like to do that. Let's talk about that in the next break, and then, of course, we'll open up for the Dennis Bushnell document, and that is the one that I think is the clincher of all this, and it will put a cherry on the top of all of this. Well, tonight, Deborah Tavares is with us. A very shocking, a very real report tonight. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Your questions and more to come from Ground Zero as we talk about these compelling topics. Keep it here.
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Documents that have been approximating our futures from the past, the present, and now. We are talking about a future where a number of things that you didn't even plan on are in the making, and they are all documented. Tonight, Deborah Tavares, my guest, who is an activist and a reporter, is giving us a summation of all those documents to tell us what is in store for our futures. Last night, we talked about the control of the entire grid. We talked about how they want full spectrum control of all things on planet Earth. They've talked about this in meetings in Bohemian Grove, the Bilderberg meetings, and now here we have the documentation to back up what they have been talking about, the leaders and the elites of the world. So, Deborah, what more do we have that has been reported and documented in these parameters which they are approximating for us for our futures?
Well, this is not even an approximation, Clyde. This is an absolute statement of fact, the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars policy. This was a 1954 adopted policy at the very first Bilderberg meeting in the Netherlands. Now, this was actually begun in the late 40s, so this is even earlier than the Iron Mountain Report. And the Rockefeller Foundation got on the ground floor, and working with Harvard University, they formed a Harvard Economic Research Project to study the structure of the American economy. That means everything about the families, everything about our economy. And then a year later, after Rockefeller started this with Harvard, in 1949, the United States Air Force joined in. Now remember this, because this is going to be important when we leap into the NASA war document. But it's very important to understand that this document is a declaration of war. And why that is so is they say on page 4 of the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document, which you can download off of stopthecrime.net, they say that any time a group of persons in significant and great power without the full knowledge or consent of the public uses their knowledge and power for economic conquest, it is understood that a state of domestic warfare exists. And this is what they said back in the 1940s. This is why on October 21st of 1945, we became a charter member of the UN and we relinquished our sovereignty. And this is important to understand why Kennedy said what he said only 10 days before he was assassinated, telling us that we were opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy. He told us that it relied on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, and infiltration instead of invasion, and on subversion instead of elections. The elections are set up by the international bankers, and when you read the Silent Weapons document, you find out that it was all a ruse. The elections are just to placate us so that we feel that we have a voice, when underneath it all, the international bankers are putting those in the president, and they're nothing but puppets. That's why we are effectively, and we are USA Inc. We have mega banks and mega corporations posing as a legitimate government, and it is not. America has been taken. We have been seized. And in order to regain anything, if that's even possible, Clyde, is to go back to 1776 and try to regain the Constitution that we had briefly. But Kennedy warned us that There would be infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. He said that it was a system that had conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that controlled the military, our political aspect, all the intelligence, the scientific, and economic of the country. And we were warned. We did not listen. And I can tell you that this document is absolutely imperative. Everyone listen must go to stopthecrime.net and read this document. Again, it's only 44 pages.
Stop the crime. It's stopthecrime.net. A lot of people have been tweeting right now saying that you're the best guest ever, Deborah, and they're also wanting to know stopthecrime.net. I'm saying it again for those that are following along. Stopthecrime.net. We're going to take a break quickly. Then I want to talk with Deborah about something that was uncovered and talked about at the Conspiracy Conference. It's a 2001 document called The Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare 2025. We're going to talk about that coming up and a few other things too. And your calls. Keep it here on Ground Zero. Compelling show tonight. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
Here to border on fantasy.
Stand by.
You have 5 seconds. 5. Information is free. 4. 3. There is hope. 1.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, give up, give up, give up, give up, give up.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Tonight, a very compelling program with Deborah Tavares on the show tonight, talking to us about a few documents that were released 40s, 50s, 60s, and the facts that are now coming to pass. At first, there were approximations, there were estimations, and now they're happening. But one of the documents that got my attention was something that she had talked about at a conspiracy conference, a document that surfaced, created in 2001 for NASA. It was written as a PowerPoint by Dennis Bushnell, the chief NASA scientist at Langley. The document is called Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare 2025. It's a PDF file that is now available, and states directly on the cover of the document that this technological terror that people are afraid of is being introduced now. At the time, now was 2001, but now is exactly right now. The document was released in 2001, and its warnings were lost in all the noise that took place after the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the United States. 12 years later, the document is resurfaced and was discussed by Deborah Tavares. A new video was released. It actually has been posted on YouTube and stopthecrime.com. The document has some very interesting points that indicate that the government has plans for total control of the population grid and will use silent weapons to depopulate the planet. Now, I guess this is really nothing new, because what this is the report is backing up the idea of using silent weapons like HAARP, wind towers, and other things like smart meters on every home to monitor the energy consumption of every human on the grid. And so these future events have repercussions, and we are going to be discussing those with Deborah on the program. We welcome her back to the show. Deborah Tavares, welcome back to Ground Zero.
Well, thank you so much, Clyde. There's another point I need to make from the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document that is the underpinnings of the NASA document. The silent weapons system, they say on page 8 of the silent weapons document, is a type of biological warfare. It attacks the vitality, options, and mobility of individuals of a society by knowing, understanding, manipulating, and attacking the sources of natural and social energy and their physical and mental and emotional strengths. And now what we see with the smart meters and all of the frequencies, i.e. the cell phone towers that are being hidden and deployed all over our country, this is a frequency attack. This is all part of the silent weapons system. In fact, at this point, everybody needs to go to antennasearch.com and find out where the antennas and cell phone towers are deployed near your homes, in your communities, and in your neighborhoods. These are weapons. Make no mistake about it. Go to stopthecrime.net and also smartmetersmurder.com and watch Barry, B-A-R-R-I-E, Trower's YouTubes that we've had transcribed as well. The cell phone towers are weaponized, and this is causing, of course, all of the maladies that many people are facing, seizures, vertigo, tumors, irritability, tension, much depression, agitation, balancing problems. This is all part of the result of this silent weapons system. We don't even realize we're being attacked by a weapon, and we are. They say in the silent weapons document that the public instinctively feels that something is wrong, but because of the technical nature of a silent weapon, we cannot express our feelings in a rational way or handle the problem with intelligence. Therefore, we do not know how to cry for help, or we do not know how to associate with others to defend ourselves against it. Well, we do, because you're hearing now what this is all about, so that you'll understand why you have migraines, why you're having sleep disruption, insomnia, night sweats, why there's massive increases in autism and all of the designer children maladies, ADHD, etc. This is all planned environmentally. So we have many choices we can make as we waffle through this absolutely Luciferian attack upon us, causing asthma, food allergies, everything you can imagine. This is the silent weapon attack upon us. And I just want to say one more thing about the silent weapons document, and this is pertaining to Snowden. And this is on page 11, and this is extremely important to understand what they said in the 1940s and 50s. They said in order for the elites to achieve their sovereignty, they must at least achieve one end, and that was that the public was to make neither a logical or mathematical connection between the economics and the energy sciences. This is becoming, they said, increasingly difficult to control because more and more businesses are making demands upon computer programmers to create and apply mathematical models to manage their businesses. They say this: it is only a matter of time before the new breed of private programmer will catch on to the far-reaching implications of the work began at Harvard in 1948. The speed with which this can communicate their warning to the public will largely depend upon how effective we have been at controlling the media, subverting education, and keeping the public distracted with matters of no real importance. Critical to read this Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars document. The very concluding paragraph in this document says, those who will not use their brains are no better than those that have no brains. And we are a mindless school of jellyfish, father, mother, son, and daughter. And we become useful beasts of burden and slave labor and fodder. This is how they look at us. So now when we move into the NASA document, this will make some sense because this is a carry forward to 2001 as the PowerPoint that Clyde just said, presented by Dennis Bushnell, who is a transhumanist. He wants to transition into machinery, and that's what this document is all about. The document is about robots, cyborgs, and humans. And when I first found this document, it said on page 4 that everything presented in this document was existing data, trends, and analogies and technologies. And remember, this was in 2001. On 93, page 93, what is just unbelievable is, again, this was 2 months before 9/11 that this was presented as a PowerPoint. It said terror attacks within the continental United States take down critical infrastructure, use binary weapons, biologicals, use of EMP, which is an electromagnetic pulse. If this occurs, we go back to the Stone Ages. Our entire grid is shut down. Computers, everything that we've known is done. They say they will use frequencies against our brains. They say capture, torture Americans in living color on prime time. On page 93 still, it says exploit CNN syndrome. Very important to watch the movie on StopTheCrime.net about Psy War. It tells you the history of CNN that was set up by the CIA. And you'll understand why they talk throughout this document of serious Psy War and collateral damage and exploitation. They, again, move forward on the glue that they believe is necessary to hold power over us through terror, fear, and make-believe and disinformation. Well, you're getting the real documents. So they also talk about, on page 66, increasingly critical are human limitations and human downsides. Humans are too large, too heavy, too tender. Humans are too slow, both mentally and physically. We require huge costs. We have a rapidly decreasing to negative value. The very next page, 67, talks about robots in the large, how it saves lives, enhances affordability, redefines risk and threat to the environment. They're very, very concerned about the environment. NASA's pushing forward the false global warming idea, which they say on page 8 that we're on a spaceship Earth. We're plundering the ship's supplies, tinkering with the temperature and life support controls, still looking for the instruction manual, engaging in bloody skirmishes in every corner of the vessel, and increasing the size of the crew by 2 million per week. They say on page 9 that humans have taken over and vastly shortened evolution. They are planning to direct evolution. They go on to talk about how they will unleash robots on us. It's called the Eat or Choo-Choo robot. It's a flesh, plant-eating robot. It prefers flesh. They're going to unleash this on the land to live off the land. And the inventor, Stuart Wilkinson, said he was very concerned about the dangers of these robots because they would eat humans. And this is in this document. On page 43, they talk about the use of micron-sized mechanized dust, which will be distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs. They say the dust mechanically bores into the lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. They go on to say that many of these techniques and weapons in this document are now legal. It's a new class of weaponry which is legal. They will be using beam weapons. That will become increasingly prevalent. So when you hear about people feeling that they have headaches or migraines, this and that, they could be being targeted with beam weaponry. Of course, all of this is regarding the frequencies, the cell phone towers, antennas. We've got to unplug as much as possible from our wireless gadgetry. This was put forth to create radiation, make us ill, bring in big pharma, reduce our vitality. On page 50, they talk about the effects of low-power microwaves. And on our website, StopTheCrime.net, you can read the document that they refer to. They refer to the U.S. Army document, and we have that on our website. It's about a 21-page document talking about what frequencies will do. The smart grid is a pulsed genocide electromagnetically.
This is some remarkable stuff. Deborah Tavares, StopTheCrime.net is the website. Check it out. We're going to be back with more. We got a lot of phone calls we got to get to tonight. A lot of people wanting to talk to Deborah, wanting to get those questions in there. A lot of tweets, a lot of stuff happening. This is amazing. 888-673-3700. 888-673-3700. Your calls and more information coming up from Deborah Tavares right here on Ground Zero.
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
This is not a test. It is the future. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Deborah Tavares is my guest tonight, reporter and activist, and definitely has a lot of information to share with us tonight. A lot of people wanting to get on the lines to talk. We've got to take some phone calls, Deborah, for sure. A lot of people are chomping at the bit to talk to you. We're going to talk to John in California, calling from KOGO 600 AM. You have a question for Deborah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had one quick question, but after being on hold, it's like, wow, that's a whole, a lot of stuff out there. The whole New World Order, like SPP.gov, the whole free trade agreement thing, the illegal amnesty bill coming up. I'll take these answers off the air. And then the other one was, she brought up the movie Soylent Green. I watched that as a kid at the theater, and that's one of those scary movies. That was Edward G. Robinson's last movie with Charlton Heston, and I always remember everyone wore the same clothes, and it was hot. I was wondering if that was like part of the whole global warming thing. But that movie, to this day, is I could just think about it and it scares me, And is Deborah married? But yeah, she's something else. I'll tell you what. Yeah, great show, Clyde. I'll take them off the air.
All right, John, go ahead.
Well, John, thank you so much for those questions. Absolutely watch Soylent Green now, but as I said earlier, watch it after you've watched the report from Iron Mountain on StopTheCrime.net. It will all start to connect for you. You will understand when you see the Cinemix flyer that we have on our website. They're feeding us human baby fetuses in many of the food products that are put forth by the global elite. It's very, very important to understand that what we see happening in our government right now, we don't have a government. We are USA Inc. We've been taken over by banks and by mega corporations posing as a government. They're not. They're collapsing us. We recently went to Al Gore's preview when he previewed his brand new book called The Future. Unbelievable. He talks about how the middle class is being hollowed out in the United States right now. Businesses, manufacturing, all sent offshore and to China, and it will not be coming back. And in the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document, they talk about how they must reduce the middle class because it becomes too much of a threat. We gain wealth, we gain knowledge, and we become too much of a risk to their sovereignty. It's all about their sovereignty, their definition of sovereignty. And so I can tell you that in the Silent Weapons document, very, very important to understand who our enemies are. Any of the alphabet agencies, we're talking about any of them. We're talking about the CIA, the Air Force, DARPA, the FBI, Southern Command, the Department of Justice. We're talking about IBM, Google. The whole mess is a complete shoe-in for the New World Order. It's all part of the tentacles of the global elite, the Luciferian. This is what has happened to the United States. This is what has happened to the world. And the whole amnesty situation is just a sideshow. It's a distraction. While they are putting forth weapons and creating increased frequencies all around us, understand where the weapons are located near you. Again, go to antennasearch.com. Those are weapons. Our guns and our ammo are useless when you get into what they have in store. I would also recommend everybody watch the new movie Oblivion. Also, watch Eagle Eye by Spielberg. Very important to understand why we're seeing all the cameras in all of our street corners, intersections, highways. This is all part of massive, massive monitoring. The NSA facility that I visited here just a few weeks ago in Bluffdale, Utah, that's over 1 million square feet of mega massive data collection center. One of the biggest concerns about that facility is its algorithms and its ability to unencrypt all encrypted nuke codes globally. So everything we think we can hide, we can't hide. Nothing. This is for global inventory. This is for massive mind control. They want to know your thoughts. This is the thought police. This sounds incredibly horrific, but it is absolutely where we are going. They're replacing our streetlights. They say they have pilot programs happening in many states right now, and including in San Francisco. They are putting streetlights that will have subliminal messaging. Understand, this is all mind control. This is real. This is not a sci-fi movie script. They have written a sci-fi movie script and conscripted all of us as extras. We are in a massive, massive planned takeover by them and a massive genocide and enslavement program. This is all real. We have been lied to. We have been betrayed. When we flew back to Washington, D.C. to verify some of the documents, and we were actually given the documents that allowed chemicals and biologicals to be sprayed upon the American population without our knowledge or consent, that which Congress approved and the Department of Defense was given the power to do that, yes, it's a real document. They are spraying us with toxic chemtrails every single day. In fact, I posted some photographs yesterday. We're about 20 minutes from Bohemian Grove, and we have been smothered with chemtrails the last 2 days, just absolutely doused. And the news media was talking about the fact that we can expect some lightning strikes. Well, they want to burn us down. They're implementing weather attacks for plausible deniability. This is how they're taking private property. We saw what happened in Oklahoma City with the tornadoes. Go to toxicsky.org and listen to the weatherman's report on Oklahoma City. And recently, a weather forecaster said to us, we're going to have soft sunshine tomorrow. Soft sunshine. Because we have a continuous plasma sprayed over us. NASA documents indicate that has reduced global dimming by 20%. That's why we're all deficient in vitamin D. That's why our trees are dying with molds, mildews, and funguses.
That is amazing. That is amazing that all of that stuff is all being documented. And we talked a little bit about that last night. We were talking about the HART project and what they're planning on doing. There was a new article that was in the Canberra Times I want to share with you after the break about a relationship with the Australian government with this type of stuff at Pine Gap. It's interesting. I'll bring that up too. 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and you are listening to Ground Zero. Tonight, a very compelling show. Deborah Tavares is our guest tonight, giving us all sorts of information about the future and what their plans are for you. Tonight, we're taking your phone calls, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We're going to go to Jerry calling in from Illinois tonight. Jerry, hi, you're on Ground Zero. Deborah Tavares, go ahead.
Hi, Clyde. Glad to have you back. How are you, seriously?
Good.
Okay.
I'm doing fine. Yeah, thanks.
Great, buddy. I'm the guy who called a while back, said you were my Art Bell replacement.
Thank you.
Anyway, I have a comment that I can turn into a question. In a town about 25 miles from us, they spent a lot of money, about, I'm going to say a year and a half ago, putting up a new cell tower. And there were antennas all over it, and like 6 months go by, and all the antennas come up missing. And it looks, the weeds have grown up inside the fenced area. I can't tell if there's still something on top of it or not. Now, this thing had to be, I don't know, $100,000, $200,000 to put it up. A friend of mine's crane put it up. Why would they spend that much money to put it up and just leave it, abandon it? There's a question for it. You got any idea on that?
Well, what I would do is I would do antennasearch.com. I would then print out what they will tell you the company is that installed it. It doesn't mean just because weeds have grown around the base of the structure that has been abandoned. Frequencies can go through weeds. I don't know that it's been abandoned.
No, I mean that they took, physically you could see antennas all over it for the first 6 months. And then they went up there one day and took them all down at once.
Yeah, I can't speak to that specific cell tower, but what I can tell you is that they are appearing massively all over our country. They're being disguised in mobile oil gas station signs at gas stations. They're being disguised in church steeples. They're making redwood trees out of them here in Northern California, even yuccas in the desert. Go to our website, stopthecrime.net, and also smartmetersmurder.com. Look at some of the other radio shows that we've posted where we're talking about this at great extent. The cell phone towers are weaponized, as you heard me say earlier in the show.
Yeah.
So again,
I do have one other quick question. How do you tell if you have a smart meter or not?
Okay, go out to your home, go outside your house where your electric meter is, and if it does not have hands on it like a clock, then it is likely a smart meter or a derivative of the smart meter. And so what you're going to want to do is immediately call your utility company, tell them you want that removed and replaced with a legacy analog meter. Now, what the utility companies are doing here in Northern California, because we resisted to the point that many people were even getting arrested. People have had their power turned off.
I heard that going on, yeah.
Yeah, well, let me explain why and what happened. Because of the mass resistance against it, because of the refusal, the non-compliance, which we all of us must do now. It is at our doorsteps. We have no choice, or we're going to be taken and put into FEMA camps. But I can tell you they won't really need to transport us to FEMA camps because they're creating an incarceration from this pulsed electromagnetic genocide they're creating in our homes. These frequencies from the smart meter, along with dirty electricity, again, go to refuse smartmeters.com and smartmetersmurder.com. If you go to stopthecrime.net, all of our sites link from that site. And I know that many people may be feeling like I'm really giving a lot of information. I am. And because we're really needing to do a quick study. We have been left in the dark. Other nations are angry with all of us in the United States because we're fat and stupid. And we only just lost our fat rating a few weeks ago to Mexico by a couple of pounds.
I heard that.
And I have to say, when we're overweight, we're more controllable. We're not able to think as clearly. This is all part of the program. They are jamming our immune systems. It's very, very important that we all make choices, that we stay away from the Illuminati diet program. We stay away from the fast food chains that were put up. When you read the New World Order Exposed, 1969, you will see back in the 60s, they came up with a plan to fractionalize the families, to make it cheaper to eat outside, buy cheap food, toxic food, and women would not cook at home, or men would not cook at home for their families and sit at the table. Right now, we need health first. We need to create our families, our friends. We need to stick together because the entire program of the NASA war plan, as you will see when you go through that document on stopthecrime.net, is all about unplugging us, keeping us separate, keeping us behind computers so that we don't talk. I mean, when I go to an airport, everyone's busy looking at their iPhones. No one's talking to one another anymore. And they're getting radiated, their DNA sliced and diced, and they're getting sick. And the doctors haven't a clue. They haven't been trained what radiation sickness is doing, and they're medicating everybody. In fact, the Barry Trower series of YouTubes on smartmetersmurder.com talks about the vitality. This is a massive silent war attack upon all of us. We're all in the same boat. We all must quickly get up to speed as quickly as possible. That's why we put these source documents on stopthecrime.net. We talked to many, many people that have been in this for decades, 40, 50 years. Asked them if we were to put up 3 of the most important documents that are succinct and written by the bankers, the Luciferians themselves, what would that be? And these were the ones that they came up with. Now, since then, we've discovered many documents that are very alarming and very disturbing. And the NASA war document, the Future Strategic War circa 2025, is one of them. And again, the U.S. Air Force, DARPA, the CIA, FBI, all of the entire military structure is under the domination of the international banking cartel. We have been taken. Our military, other than the compartmentalized aspect of the good soldiers that are there, they don't understand the big picture. Also, that would include people that work for NASA, some people that work for NASA, and some people that work for DARPA. Very, very important. I want to refer everyone right now, Clyde, to a very, very important book that we have posted on stopthecrime.net. Please, I hope everybody's writing this information down. You must read The Matrix Deciphered by Robert Duncan. Now, he is dedicating the rest of his life to undoing the wrongs that he unknowingly committed with increasing the technologies that helped put this technological tyranny onto all of us through the silent weapons system. And I can only tell you that that's a very, very important book to read. It is on the Mind Control tab of stopthecrime.net. Do your own research and understand what mind control is. This is what is happening now. This is why so many of our legislative officers are just absolutely unable to function. When also, very, very important, I hope everybody has a pen. Write this down. You want to go to stopthecrime.net. You want to listen to Svali, S-V-A-L-I. S-V-A-L-I. She was an ex-Illuminati. She will tell you her story. It's an interview we've posted. Very, very important to understand how the Illuminati function within their families, how they came to the United States looking at the United States as a mission. They settled in Pennsylvania and in Virginia, in San Diego and Portland. And they say that 1% of the population now in the United States are Illuminati, that they take offices, they are in city councils, in our county board of supervisors, they are judges, they are behind and underneath the takedown, the shadow government that we're being foisted upon by all of this darkness. This is so massively evil. And I want to go through the NASA document a bit more, but I also want to tell everybody you can download flyers from all of our websites, and I would recommend that you do. Copy these flyers. Keep them in your vehicles. Use magnetic bumper stickers. You'll see those on our sites. We have many people here that are doing banner hangs on the weekend, and you'll see an example of that. Go to stopthecrime.net under breaking news, new news postings, and you'll see my report from Bohemian Grove just about a week and a half ago. And in that report, you will see some of the banners that people are hanging on their cars, putting boxes with flyers. We are the media.
There was I just want to interrupt something. There was actually a report that was in RT that stated that those who were at the Bohemian Grove were actually arrested. Some people were arrested. Some were subjected to microwave beam weapons or something. Is that true?
Well, that is true. In fact, the group that I was with on the 13th of July, yes, were targeted with beam weapons. Absolutely, that was true.
That's amazing because I was just looking at that. In fact, it was a Russia Today story that was filed. It didn't file in the mainstream because we're too busy caring about the royal baby and about race relations. But in the meantime, the Bohemian Grove story was a very important story, and they were talking about how many were arrested trying to break up that meeting. And we'll have more from Deborah Tavares, final thoughts from Deborah Tavares coming up on Ground Zero. 888-673-3700. We'll be back with more. Keep it here.
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
This is not a test. It is the future. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
I wanted to also report that I was looking at a new article today. It was in the Canberra Times. The NASA document that Deborah talks about states that agencies that want full spectrum control are Air Force, CIA, DARPA, FBI, Southcom, and the Australian Department of Defense. And when I looked into the Australian Department of Defense and HARP and all the other things that are tied to this, the Gwen Towers and the Wi-Fi, I noticed that there was an article in the Canberra Times about Pine Gap, which is the equivalent of the spying arsenal HARP project that's in Australia. I want to read the quote quickly. It says, the Canberra Times reports that while details of the U.S. presence at Pine Gap remain classified, it is a matter of public record that the highly secretive National Reconnaissance Office responsible for the design and construction operation of U.S. spy satellites is present. Also represented at Pine Gap are the national security agencies, which, of course, is the intelligence organization recently made notorious by Edward Snowden, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the U.S. Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the GIA, which provides imagery and geospatial intelligence to U.S. government. All arms of the U.S. Armed Services all have personal workings at Pine Gap, and uniforms are common at the facility's annual ball. It's important to know of this relationship with Pine Gap and HARP and all of the other electronic surveillance and the full spectrum surveillance that they are going to be proposing. I just thought I would share that because I think it's very important that the audience knows this after we heard that they will be shutting down HARP temporarily, which they have, reopening again in September with new hands, which include DARPA, CIA, and other groups.
Well, with that having been said, Clyde, I want to add the enormity of a new document that we also found, but I don't want to move away from the NASA document quite yet, and I'm looking at the time. Not much left. But what I want to say quickly about the NASA war plan is that it is diabolical. They mean everything in it. And they're going forward with all of the conscripting of insects and bugs. So they're going to have mass swarm attacks. They're going to use blast wave accelerators that are going to be used to create tidal waves on low-lying areas. Go ahead to stopthecrime.net. You will see the NASA document. Click on it. We have many things under that document itself to help decipher it, because we had conversations with military personnel to decode some of the acronyms that are in that document itself. So very important. We've spent a lot of time in this document, as well as I want to point out something extremely important is the fact that they talk about mind children, and after that they have a doctor's name by the name of Moravec. And very important to understand, Moravec is a doctor at the Mind Institute at UC Davis in Central California. They have created, through environmental toxins, autism. And the reason that they have done that is because autistic people, and I know about this quite well because I have an autistic family member, they don't have empathy. They are unable to communicate emotions or feelings. They will be the perfect hired personnel by the IT, which the IT is hiring high-functioning has Asperger's. That's high functioning on the autistic spectrum. This is why these people can do these things with no regard for morality or they have no emotions. This is why they're transitioning us from humans with emotions into robots. Will be easily controlled. They believe our emotions get in the way, and so they're going to eliminate that. One more fast thing, Clyde, very, very important, is to understand that the RAND Institute created a technique that we're all facing in all the meetings that we're going to in our towns, and it's called the Delphi technique, and it's how they engineer our opinions. And I know many of you may be attending your city council meetings or your board of supervisors meetings. If you're not, you need to. This is how you see what's happening in your town. You will find that most towns throughout the United States have, through, as I said earlier in the program, through the planning director, have signed on to a climate action plan where they are going to measure and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and CO2s. This is all part of the global hoax. Your cities have signed on because this was by executive order. We are not controlled by a representative government. So go forward knowing that, so that you move from the reality that you're in into the reality that we are really in. And then we'll be able to come up with strategies and things we must do. Watch the movie Avatar. Understand how that is predictive programming. Understand that they are blending machine and humans, and they can cross over with minds. They're doing mind mapping right now. They can implant human brains into robots. They've been able to do this for quite some time.
People have told us that that's impossible, that it's not supposed to be done, but I've talked about this many times, Deborah. Hey, we're out of time. I got to tell you, thank you for this. StopTheCrime.net. Thank you for being on the program. Good night. Good night, Deborah.
Thank you so much, Clyde. Good night.
Take care. Bye-bye. We'll be back with more and your phone calls. A lot to get to tonight right here on Ground Zero. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
Hello. You are about to experience Ground Zero, an on-speaker experience. Cuts through the crowd. Just when you thought you were safe.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said,
"Wait, Jimmy."
the loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, give up, give up,
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. The numbers to call 967-3, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Tonight, we've shaken up a lot of people calling into the program tonight. Keep the calls coming because I know this is a very interesting topic to touch on, especially now when we know that the plans are not for a future that is going to be bright. It's a future of upheavals and controls, and they are wanting to control the entire grid. Full spectrum dominance is what they call it, and this is what they've been planning on. In fact, uprooting trees, putting chips in trees, perhaps even putting chips in certain areas so they can, patrol with drones and others. I mean, it's just amazing. All of the things they have planned for the future in these documents. And these have been all part of the planning since the 60s into the, prior to 2001. These are things that are very important to know. And eventually you'll be seeing it all, come to pass. Now it all sounds, so outrageous and crazy. Many people will say, well, it's not real. Well, you know what? We all said a lot of things weren't real a few years ago, and now they're taking place in this country. So I guess you can use logic, you can use your own research, The website, stopthecrime.net, has been issued from Deborah's site, my site, several other sites that are talking about this very thing. These are things that we need to be aware of. Robert in Florida, you're on Ground Zero.
Hello. I'm glad to have you back, Cleve. And I'm sorry I didn't get to talk to Ms. Tavares. She and Catherine Albrecht are performing yeoman service. Also, Mr. Snowden, although I think he's liable to disappear most likely any time now. The reason I called was I served in the U.S. military. I was attached to, I worked in the Tactical Operations Centers of Field Artillery Units that attached to the 24th Infantry and 3rd Armored Divisions. I was in the service in the 80s when the Army changed its communication system. They changed over to digital system, changing frequencies, microseconds, in order to supposedly keep the Russians from monitoring our communications. And the reason I called was certain instances that happened in the past. Now it's all starting to come together now that the Russians have, and we have reached a secret agreement to have Russian troops serving in the United States on American soil to police American citizens. All this stuff that's anecdotal stuff that's happened to me in the past now is starting to all come together. I was serving in with the 24th Infantry Division when I noticed monitoring the radio that we were getting bleed over from Spanish language into our communications. In other words, we did have a Spanish school there for military officers and from liaison units to train under our using our communications. And while serving in the First Gulf War, I noticed one day that I was getting Russian language, Russian broadcasts into our radio system, which supposedly wasn't supposed to happen. We could hear them, they could hear us. And I brought this up to the intel officers, and they kept saying, well, you're not hearing Russian, you're hearing this Arabic bleed over from the Iraqi communications. Well, I applied to go to the language school in Fort Huachuca. I know the difference between Arabic and Slavic. This wasn't Arabic, this was Slavic. The Russians were using our communication system to monitor our units while we were fighting the Iraqis in order to determine how we were doing, the only way they could do that was with acquiescence of the United States. So they've been using basically they know when they come here, they'll already be able to use our communications, and we'll have mutually compatible radio communications with them. But Mrs. Tavares is talking about eventually, what she didn't mention was the movie Terminator. This is essentially a Skynet, what they're going to implement.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with you. In fact, I even mentioned it. I said it was kind of like a Skynet. From the Terminator films, it's exactly what's happening. It's what it seems to be happening.
They won't malfunction accidentally. That's the intent from the beginning, is to use Skynet to police us.
Well, a lot of the times they say that science fiction eventually becomes science fact. We see a lot of this stuff as predictive programming, and as Deborah said, yes, pay attention to a lot of these things. And I know that it all sounds like some science fiction movie, but we seem to be seeing the reality.
With the affordable health care, that they will be able to control who gets sick and who doesn't, and who gets the medicine and who doesn't. They will be able to monitor, they will be able to control populations quite easily.
Oh, yes, it's obvious that this is happening. I know that I got an argument earlier with somebody who was in the medical profession. He says, well, they won't go for it. I go, you're right, they won't go for it, and they'll quit. And I said, that's because a lot of doctors have integrity. And I said, don't sit there and pretend like this is all going to go status quo. There will be a rebellion, and people will rebel, and people will be silenced. That's how it happens. I don't know. A lot of people are still true believers, and I don't know what it takes, a kick in the teeth or whatever, perhaps a jackboot in the face. But damn it, it's happening, and they need to pay attention to it and not be such true believers of their cause because their party dictates that they act like a bunch of monkeys.
Exactly.
So
all these changes they're making in the military, it's to force the decent people out so to get the people they can control in.
Well, Robert, I appreciate your call. Thank you so much for your experience, and thank you for your call.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye-bye. We'll go to Gino now in the Bronx, New York. Gino, you're on Ground Zero.
Clyde, I got to tell you, this guest that you had on tonight, I was just trying to just keep up with her, with all the points that she was making. I tried to take and jot down some notes, but my pencil broke and I didn't have a sharpener. So anyway, I agree with at least some of what she said. I can't buy the whole spiel that she did tonight. You should have her on again next week, maybe over 2 nights, and let the audience like me go at her for a few points. But I'll bring up a couple of novels and movies that she left off her list for your audience. Fahrenheit 451, Dr. Zhivago, and, of course, 1984. But other than that, unless she is on my side regarding the American Bolsheviks, who are going to be leading a one-party dictatorship on January 20th, 2017, when my buddy boy from Fordham, Andy Boy Cuomo, becomes your next president, and his minions that he's going to have out there, the human flesh eating, the soy and green crap, I can't buy that. At least not now.
Look up Synomix, Synomix. It's actually used from the what it is. It's a taste. What is it? Taste enhancer. That what they use is they use human fetus as a test taster for foods like chocolates, some soda pops, and others. And yes, it's called Synomix, Synomix. I've talked about this before, and yes, they do use it, and yes, it is part of that. The human, it's used to enhance human taste.
Okay, but Deborah's going to have a tough slog when it comes to 20 and 30-somethings who are using their iPhones, iPads, and iPods for practically every type of human communication. As far as the cell phone towers being weaponized, again, even I have a hard time believing some of that. But to think that all these young putzes who voted for Obama not once but twice are going to believe that he's actually behind all this, and that his wonderful friends in the American Bolshevik Party are also behind this, along with some of my co-conspirators from my side of the political spectrum, fiscal conservatives who would sell their own mothers out to make a profit into white slavery. I mean, all that is possible. I don't see it. I don't see it having happened. I don't see it happening anytime in the near future. But the shredding of the Constitution, I'll go along with her on that.
No one would have believed prior to September 11th, 2001, that this country would be attacked in the way that it was. And yet it was.
I agree with you on that, too.
And yet it was.
And
nobody would have believed that in broad daylight, with security cameras everywhere and a group called the Kraft Company being security, that 2 bombs would go off during the Boston Marathon and kill 3 people. It did happen. Nobody would have believed that in the search for the suspects, they would have locked down an entire area of Boston, including some parts of Connecticut. No one would have believed it. But it happened. No one would have believed the police state mentality that has taken over this country, but it's happening. The thing is, Gino, it's being reported and documented. Nothing that she said has not been placed in a document somewhere that has not been at least approximated by a group of people who are there to make the decisions for you. So to dismiss it just because you feel uncomfortable about it does not make it not real.
And I said I go along with some of what she said. And as far as 2001 and the 9/11 attacks, the rent-a-cops that they had at the Newark Airport and Boston's Logan Airport were not real cops. They weren't real security. They were unarmed imbeciles who you can get for a dime a dozen. They let the 19 Muslim murderers get past them. As far as Boston is concerned, that was something that they had to do, because if they would have let these 2 mongoloids get past them, they would have been held accountable, and Boston PD and Massachusetts State PD and all the other law enforcement, FBI included, would have come under heavy criticism, and that means Obama would have had some problems coming up in this year's off-year elections. So all that aside, I'm willing to at least accept some of what Deborah said. But you should have her on again, and you should have her on when I could get a crack at her.
All right, Gino. All right, Gino. Thanks, man.
Take it easy. Have a good night.
You too. Take care. Gino from the Bronx. Tough guy. Has a lot of opinions and says he has a hard time with some. But that's I guess, warranted. Why? Because Future Shock is that way. People have a hard time believing it. The documents are there. You can look over the documents and see the plans are in play, the approximations, and the things that have happened can be revealed if you just do the homework and the investigation. 888-673-3700. It's 888-673-3700. If you have an opinion of what was said tonight on the program, I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you have any other things you'd like to indicate about what you feel is happening in the world, what the future holds, please call in. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Let's have a lively discussion because a lot of things were dumped on us tonight, and I'm sure you have a lot to talk about and express right here on Ground Zero. Don't go away.
FM News 101 KXL.
This is Ground Zero on FM News 101.
Everyone is in on the secrets, and big things are being planned. Call Clyde Lewis now. Ground Zero.
Okay, let's go to Dan in Camas, Washington. Hi, Dan. You're on Ground Zero.
Yeah, Clyde, thank you for what you do. And my point is the Constitution and all that stuff, the Senate, the Congress, all that stuff was based on people were 200 days away from hearing what was going on. And that's why we sent congressmen, senators, all that stuff to Washington. We have email, letters, everything. We're all within a day or two of it. Why do we need those people now? Why can't we, as people, just vote collectively on what's going on? Why do we need them?
Well, there needs to be a demand, first of all, from a group of people, a lot of people who are willing to take the chance and step forward and say, look, we don't need this. There are not many people who are willing to risk anything. I mean, people won't even risk a day off work. They just won't do it. And that's because, you know, we are such a well-oiled group of people who follow the directions of other people, when in reality, who are we answering to? We're answering to a bunch of people who don't give a damn about you or me. And I would say, you know, one day someone's going to wise up and say, look, if the worker ants decide not to work, the grasshoppers aren't going to benefit. And I think that's what needs to be done here. But yet, the American people are what?
Is if you could vote on this, if America could vote on this, should we send $100 million federal aid to Egypt or some country? No, we wouldn't. None of us would send it.
Well, no, we wouldn't send it. But see, the point is that we shouldn't care about what is going on out there. We need to look at domestic problems. We need to understand that the provisions that have been put down, the documents that have been sent out, the proposals that have been written by both Republicans and Democrats, because people seem to say it's all about Obama. No, I want to talk about Graham, and I want to talk about McCain and their stupid NDAA and their stupid idea for Battlefield America and the open-ended war and the fact that we are all criminals in their eyes. I think the whole lot of them are desperately trying to destroy America, and to actually have any kind of side where one party believes that they're better than another party is stupid, it's idiotic, and it needs to stop. I have been told that conspiracy theories and conspiracy theorists should have their head examined. But what's worse, a person who thinks outside the box of infinite possibilities, or a person who sits and identifies himself with a group of enablers that have been enabling the destruction of the Constitution, have been enabling the war effort, and enabling the fact that they want to enslave us, keep us to the point where we're not making enough money to feed our families, keep us to the point where we're unhappy, keep us to the point where we're always in pain, keep us to the point where we're completely beguiled and kept mesmerized by a group of news and television shows that are there to do nothing but to water down everything to euphemistic jargon that can completely be dumbed down by the status quo. This is where we are in America now, and we deserve better, we should do better, but we don't. We've all been traumatized into thinking we don't deserve anything, and it's all been done by these so-called leaders that are in place, and yet we still pay homage, we still care about them, we still talk about them. I say to hell with them, I say to hell with the party system, and I say to hell with anybody that continues to push that one party's better than the other one.
Well, I agree with you, and one of my sore points is John McCain. I mean, What's with that guy?
Well, he was a prisoner of war, and now he wants to make prisoners of war of everybody here in this country. He'd like to switch us all into a Battlefield America plan where they put drones in the air, that everybody is considered a criminal, that we have precog crime. All those things you read about in the Philip K. Dick novel are becoming reality. And all the things that Deborah talked about tonight are becoming reality. And people still say, oh, yeah, that'll be the day. Well, you know what? It is the day. The day is today, and it's aggravating to see so many people still be in denial and still ridicule those who think outside the box and talk openly about these topics and want to do something about it and get the word out. It just infuriates me to no end, Dan, that I hear this all the time, and I wish people would stop regulating these topics to one day out of the week like it's some cartoon. Let's do Conspiracy Thursday or Conspiracy Tuesday. Hey, how about you wake the hell up and realize that there is a conspiracy? It's no longer red state, blue state. It's the state versus you. That's what it's been like, and the conspiracy is out to get every single one of us. And until we realize that that's the case, we're all going to be a bunch of slaves lulled into this nonsense and be readied and prepared for war in our backyards and our doorstep. That is the future of America if you don't wise the hell up. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. We'll be back.
This is Ground Zero on FM News 101. More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
A new generation of surveillance drones could soon be watching us all from overhead. The Federal Aviation Administration is expected to announce plans to expand the use of domestic drones in American airspace.
Agencies love these drones, and they say they'll be able to save lives in things like hostage situations or search and rescue operations. But obviously, the privacy concerns are huge, because they will, in effect, bring every single backyard in America into the authorities' view.
All commercial television and radio transmission facilities throughout the world will be tied into my communication system by 1000 hours Friday. At that time, I will state my intentions for the future of mankind.
What we're really living under, or what we're really subject to, is a system of I just use the term, which isn't really a new term, but full spectrum dominance.
And by the end of the week, we should have control of this whole area. If all the information we have is correct, the Russians have crippled this block here, and are now working in the Ukraine, in this area.
So that you will learn by experience that I do not tolerate interference, I will now detonate the nuclear warheads in the two missile silos.
Senators McCain and Levin have added this legislation which would authorize the president to declare the entire United States of America, all 50 states and all territories, to be a battlefield, even though there's no battle, thanks be to God, going on here.
War on terror is different.
And that would authorize him to use commander-in-chief authority in the United States, to use the military to arrest people in the United States who, in the president's opinion, are enemies of the country. Who supports it has argued that this would authorize the president of the United States to arrest Americans by simply saying they gave up their citizenship.
New questions tonight about an Army combat brigade being trained to deal with civil disturbances in the United States. The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 generally prohibits federal uniformed services from carrying out domestic law enforcement duties, except in cases expressly authorized by the Constitution or an act of Congress.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and you are listening to Ground Zero. The numbers to call tonight, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. A war has been declared right here in your own backyard. Silent weapons are being used for a quiet war. We will feel the presence of these weapons soon, if we're not witnessing them now. Mass mind control, electronic controls, shutdowns, you name it. They have it all in their hands, and they're being controlled by these shadow governments in the back. No one knows who's really controlling the picture, but we do know that secrecy is prevalent, and these are things that we need to pay attention to. Tonight on the program, we had Deborah Tavares to talk about this. She managed to talk about a lot of things. And tonight we're going to the calls, talking with listeners about how they feel about this. Jeremiah in Easton, Pennsylvania, you're on Ground Zero.
Hey, how you doing, Clyde? I'm a first-time listener. I think the show is actually pretty cool.
Thank you.
And I do agree with some of your statements as far as where this country is going. It is going in a scary direction. But the one thing that I noticed, I actually hopped on Deborah's website, the Stop the Crime.
Yeah.
And the very first quote that she has listed is a quote from JFK. And I don't know if you want me to read the quote off to you real quick. The high office of the president has been used to foment a plot to destroy America's freedom. And before I leave this office, I must inform the citizens of their plight. This statement was allegedly made at Columbia University on the 12th of November, 1963. There is no hard evidence that he actually even said it. So why she even put it on her website to begin with? I mean, that kind of throws her credibility out, into question a little bit.
Hard evidence that he said it or he didn't say it. I mean, did he say it or didn't he?
No, absolutely. But there is no evidence either way.
That doesn't mean that he didn't say it.
No, absolutely. But I mean, she also made some really far-fetched claims that I think are kind of out there.
Like what?
Our country, some of the claims on the website were the man-eating robot and stuff like that.
Yeah, Choo-Choo. It was mentioned in the document for the 2001. Yeah, there is a robot that does assist on plants and animals, and it can eat humans. In fact, I did a whole show, when was it, years ago, when I first heard of the Choo-Choo robot. It actually, in order for it to remain powered, it remains powered on protein.
Yeah, that was released back in 2000. But I mean, the actual likelihood of them sending this after civilians, I really seriously doubt that.
How? What? Look, listen. Why would you seriously doubt that they would sick robots when DARPA... listen to me. DARPA is, right now, they have created robots that are going to replace police officers. You realize this?
No, absolutely.
Okay, so what would be the... I mean, they've got drones that'll be flying over us that could kill us indiscriminately. Why would it matter if they shoot us dead or eat us? What does it matter?
Why? I would think that honestly, if they're going to kill us, I would think they would go the economical route.
What's that?
The route that they're going by ordering 2 billion rounds of ammunition for Homeland Security.
That's just one way to do it. There are many, Jeremiah, there are many ways to kill us. And the most outrageous thing is that it's not Deborah who talked about Choo-Choo, the protein-eating robot. It was Dennis Bushnell that talked about it.
Well, we're getting off. I mean, I'm not saying that everything that she said is complete BS. There are some things that she said that are possible. The nano robots and stuff like that are definitely possible.
Remember, Jeremiah, this was all Dennis Bushnell. It has nothing to do with Deborah. Deborah uncovered the document. The document is real, and Dennis Bushnell is a lunatic transhumanist. I mean, I've seen interviews with the guy. The guy's out of his freaking mind.
Yes, but also the entire document isn't on the website.
Is what?
The entire document isn't actually on the website.
On what website?
And on Stop the Crime.
Well, I've got the PDF on my website. If you want to go to my website, I've got the entire PDF. If you want to watch the PowerPoint, it's rather bizarre. I mean, you just look through everything that he has proposed that has been talked about. Just go to my website. Go to groundzeromedia.org. Go to the latest article that I had released, The Enemy After Next. Warfare 2025. Take a look at the PDF and read it, and I think that you're going to find yourself just going, you got to be kidding me. That, Deborah, I mean, it sounds outrageous, but, this is Dennis Bushnell talking. It's not Deborah talking. It's Deborah. It's Dennis Bushnell.
I would just, I don't know why she wouldn't have the entire document up there. She only has snippets that could be misconstrued out of context.
But they're not. That's the whole point. They could be, but they're not. See, you're going on all these wherefores and whyfores. You're trying to be objective, or you're trying to be devil's advocate, but you're doing it on the premise that, well, she could be, and she could be. Well, yeah, of course. But the truth of the matter is these documents exist, and I was reading them prior to doing this program tonight. And everything she says checks out.
Oh, yeah, but again, I haven't seen that document. I just hear,
All right, go to my website and read the document. Go to my website, Jeremiah, read the document, and we'll have a good laugh over the fact that this guy talks about Choo Choo, the man-eating robot, and how it exists. Look, a lot of what I was reading, I was just like going, you got to be kidding me. And then I saw an interview with someone who had an encounter with Dennis Bushnell, and this is not a conspiracy theorist. It's some guy that spoke, and he wanted to talk about cold fusion, for crying out loud. Talking about cold fusion, talking about all that stuff, and saying that Bushnell was just like completely like paranoid, weird, out there, talking about all these things, saying that it's all coming down, transhumanism is all coming down, humans are the problem, that evolution is being halted by the humans, that we need to get rid of humans. I mean, this is a guy that worked at Langley, who is considered a top scientist at NASA, and he's a transhumanist lunatic.
Yeah. But
you got to read the PowerPoint, Jeremiah. I know that she sounds outrageous, and she is outrageous. Trust me. I mean, gosh. I mean, everybody's saying that God, most excellent guest on the program. But you got to understand, she's pretty damn amazing when you consider all that stuff that she's retained and she's got up there. And it does. I mean, and being being part of the People's Press is not a perfect position to be in. You got to admit that. I mean, she's not like a radio talk show host. Well, I'm not always the best either. But, I mean, go in and at least take a look at some of this outrageous stuff and say, geez, you got to be kidding me. And just kind of go, well, wow, is any of this going to happen? And if it does happen, but yeah, Choo Choo, yeah, it's a DARPA prototype. And it does eat humans and it eats animals in order to sustain, actually plant life, in order to sustain its power supply.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, I'm very familiar with that. But yeah, like I said, I mean, just some of it seems far-fetched, and the fact that they might unleash it, it's just too circumstantial. And that's pretty much the only point I want to make.
Well, you know what? You're a new listener to the program, and I know that it's a little hard to swallow half the stuff I talk about, but I promise you, Jeremiah, one day you're going to wake up, and something is going to hit you, and you're going to laugh so hard because you're so scared like I get sometimes. When I laugh, I'm scared. And I laugh nervously because it's not that I'm terrified. It's just that I'm scared because I realize that all this stuff that I listen to and go, wow, 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 and go, I hope it's not real. I hope it's not real. I hope it's not real. And then it becomes real. Then the wow turns into, oh my God. It turns into insanity. And that's the way it is, man. You just gotta, sometimes it's hard to come up for air.
Yeah, definitely.
I love you, man. Hey, I'm so glad you're out there listening, Jeremiah. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 27.
You are the man. Thank you for being a part of the younger half of my demographic. I love you, buddy.
Yeah, not a problem, man.
Hey, thank you for calling in tonight.
Hey, thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, come on. 27. You're listening to this idiot on the radio. What are you going to think? This guy's out of his freaking mind. So I can understand that. I really can. But I'm not out of my freaking mind. Well, I guess in some ways I can be out of my freaking mind. 888-673-3700. Come join the craziness with us. 888-673-3700. We'll be back with more. Keep it right here on Ground Zero.
FM News 101 KXL. This is Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
All right, let's go to Bear in Santa Clara, California. Hi, Bear. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, how you doing, Clyde? Hey, good. Deborah was right on the money. She's too much information too quick. You need to get her back on. And one of the things I wanted to mention was about all the microwave radiation, especially with the laptops and the Wi-Fi, and we're sending our children in there basically, in a high microwave RF environment just to cook their brains and, cell phones and stuff like that, not good for the human body. Just wanted to put the word out, that they are basically, cooking our, bodies with all this microwave energy they got floating around out there.
Well, one of the things I find interesting, and I kind of posed this question a while ago, and no one really can give me the answer, but I have a feeling that microwave energy, the electronic fields that we're creating, the way the grid is being taken, how we push the grid to where it is. We hear about the bees dying. And they say that it has a lot to do with Monsanto. But I have a feeling, too, it has a lot. It's kind of a binary process. What we have is we have a situation going on where the human body now is becoming more and more fatigued. That is why you're hearing about people that need to drink Red Bull, or they need to drink energy drinks like rock stars and everything else. We just can't get enough energy because it's being zapped out of us with electronics. I worry that that's the reason why there seems to be this need. And in fact, before I went into surgery, I was downing the drinks as well. I was downing the rock stars and all that at night to keep awake. I kind of set aside a little bit of time. If I felt like I wanted to stay up, I would have a rock star. Those are the things that, push the body in ways that you wouldn't even think. And I think that it has a lot to do with the fact that being exposed to all of this magnetic energy in the electronic fields may be drying us out, and we are not getting enough to drink or enough to even keep us energized.
Yeah, and then you got the food, the GMOs and stuff like that. It's just like draining the nutrients out of your bodies, and you're eating pesticides and the stuff they're spraying in the sky and the RF energy they got, just bouncing around. There's no way to shield yourself from it. I mean,
well, see, I'm trying to create a reason now, Bear. I'm trying to create a reason now to even have a desire to eat the things I used to eat, because after my surgery, I mean, I came out, it feels like, to be honest, it feels like someone has kicked me in the private area of my body, and then it's like the whole stomach area is not feeling as well as it could. I mean, I take medications, but they can only do so much. And the problem is that appetite now is a matter of, do I want to put this in my body because I need the empty calories, or do I want to think first before I do so? So now things that I normally wouldn't eat, like maybe soups or a lot of fruit and maybe some salad or whatever, now it seems to be the staple of my diet. No longer am I sitting here thinking about that big juicy steak I can put my mouth on, unless, of course, it's made by my fiance, which she makes good steaks and everything else. What I'm saying is, meat for me now is kind of like I want it sparingly so that I can have room for all the other lighter things that can give me the nutrients. And even then, I wonder if I'm getting as much nutrition as I should. So I'm actually having this complex right now after surgery, trying to figure out if what I'm taking into my body is benefiting it.
Well, that's why I try to eat as much organic as possible. And, and there are products out there that are organic that are a lot more nutritious, and, and you can stay away from some of the poisonous foods.
Well, and even then, I don't even know if organic is the way to go either. I mean, I know a lot of people say organic, but you know what? Just because it has the big O on it doesn't necessarily mean it's good for me. And I don't take that for granted either. I'm becoming food paranoid. I had a food paranoia before about food that sat out for long periods of time, but now I'm beginning to have product and food paranoia after my cancer. It's just a complex that I've developed in a short amount of time. It may be to my advantage. Maybe I'll lose weight in the process or something, but in the meantime, I'm just not as happy, or at least as satisfied with food and those things that are supposed to keep me energized. I just don't feel it anymore, and I'm wondering what I need to do to, get into that mood again. But I have a feeling that maybe it's to my advantage. Maybe the idea of fast food not appealing, or what we call weaponized food that makes us so obese and obsequious. I mean, those are the things that we need to take into consideration.
You're right, and I think your fiance is on the right track. To kind of get the more nutritious, more healthy food into you. And I know the pain meds that you must be on are probably affecting your appetite as well.
Yeah, they probably are. I mean, I've been on them before, but anymore they're the only thing that keep me from actually just kind of like sitting in a corner and kind of feeling like I'm alone. So I mean, that's the problem.
Believe me, I know where you're at, and I mean,
yeah,
you kind of got a clue what I've been through. So it's just like, just hang in there, and just try and eat good and stay away from the sugars and stay away from the artificial sweeteners and stuff like that. And just take life in and be happy, dude.
Well, I'm almost rid of the artificial sweeteners. I'm not drinking any more diet sodas, if that's any consolations, really. I'm trying to avoid them. But every once in a while I sip them, but I don't have them as much as I used to. I used to just be like a fanatic of having at least a Diet Coke or some sort of diet drink in the studio with me. Now I'm drinking these vitamin-fortified water drinks that are not bad. So, I mean, I'm hoping that whatever I do is going to improve my life. Bear, thank you so much for calling tonight. 888-673-3700. It's 888-673-3700. Get in on the conversation. I have a few lines open if you want to get in tonight. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700 as we explore what is out there, the approximations, the theories, and the realities of future war, and how warfare will be using silent weapons for the quiet war. It's happening now. And we're going to talk more about it coming up on Ground Zero with your phone calls. Don't go away. More to come.
FM News 101 KXL.
Some of the scenes you will witness may appear to border on fantasy.
Stand by. You have 5 seconds. 5. Information is free. 4, 3, there is hope. 1.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Wait, Jimmy." The loudspeaker spoke up and said, the loudspeaker spoke up and said, "Did you hear that? Give up. Give up.
I'm Clyde Lewis, and this is Ground Zero. Tonight we have really covered a lot of ground and a lot of things to talk about. And I know that for many of you, it's new. For many of you, you may wonder where you can get the information we talk about, what people like Deborah Tavares talk about. And it's simple, really. You just need to remember certain titles and certain documents that are available now because they've been released. What used to be secrecy is now becoming so old hat that we can now unveil it and see what their plans were and how they've all come to fruition. Starting out with a report from Iron Mountain, all the way to documents now that deal with things like wartime and silent weapons for quiet wars. William Cooper, who wrote the book Behold a Pale Horse, also spoke of these very things. And there are a number of other people that if you pay attention to what they say, you can pretty much figure out what is coming. Politicians, scientists, and preachers know what deep fears are clouding people's minds right now. Rather than giving us hope in what appears to be a hopeless situation, they exploit our deepest fears and the uncertainty that comes with our preparation for an end-of-the-world scenario that has been programmed into us for millennia. And while there's preparation anxiety with all of it, there comes a wave of thought that continues to feed upon itself, eventually creating a negatively charged beast that devours any glint of hope that exists in our future. If you're paying attention to what is going on now in our world, you can stop and consider that this whole endgame scenario, this mindset, is putting a critical mass of people into a semi-conscious state of despair. And that is warranted. It is also being fortified in this traumatic psyop. The world crumbles around us, and I don't know if people actually think that this is where we're supposed to be, or if it's not really happening, or you have the mentality that in the middle of the mob, you don't even know that there is a mob that's creating havoc in the vicinity. Sometimes people aren't aware of their surroundings unless someone tells them, oh, by the way, you're in the middle of a revolution. Oh, by the way, you're in the middle of some sort of psychological operation. Oh, by the way, the reason why you're numb to it all is because they programmed you to be numb to it all. They programmed you for your response. I was remembering as I was posting on my Facebook page some things about the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin thing. And every time I would say something about the psychological operation and how John Rappaport, who's a well-known reporter, had said the same thing. He said something to the effect that, looking around, that this is definitely a psychological operation because people are actually talking about the topic, but you can just mention the names, and immediately people have an opinion on racism, they have an opinion on race or anything like that, and they continue to push the issues. Tonight on CNN, they did it all over the place. It's still going on. Even the royal baby can't even dispel this tension that we have. But see, the obvious thing is when I said, hey, it's a psychological operation, nobody will address the psychological operation. They will only address the issue of race, which only goes to show you that many times you can tell someone that they're in the middle of a psychological operation, and yet they'll avoid it because they don't even know what it is. They just know that they're in the middle of the brainwashing, and all the content that's being pushed is all part of the future shock. And that is what really concerns me. Because it's always good food for thought to push issues and talk about issues that aren't normally talked about. But, when you read further, the more you think it's like a science fiction novel, and yet you have to maintain the reality that what is being called future events are really happening now, and that the technology spoken of is advanced silent weaponry for quiet full-scale warfare. Some of the more remarkable things that I was looking at today with regards to these warfare documents looks like something out of the Hunger Games. It's like torture and brutality, and everything will be caught on a broadcast and will be put in prime time to indicate the need for more brutality and more force, more militarized police. The Battlefield America scenario where extremists will use binary biological weapons capable of taking down vital infrastructure. Furthermore, there is also indications that terror or extremist cells do have silent weapons that are not only affecting the weather, but can also create pulse capabilities like an EMP, and can take out the power grids of heavily populated areas. Microwave technologies, more of the same. Television networks are vital in creating what is known as psy-war operations, and they will maintain the public opinion that the United States is most definitely in need of a surveillance society capable of preventing attacks that are simply false flag events. As I said last night, since 2012, 10 terrorist attacks, none of them in the United States, 10 Americans dead from terrorist attacks, and none of them were in the United States, and yet all of this for the open-ended war on terror. And no one is saying stop. It doesn't seem to look as if anyone is saying no, and we should say no more often to these things. And some things as innocuous as, cell phones, microwave technologies, Wi-Fi, and cell phone towers. Hey, you never know. It could be dangerous to your health. Brentley in Greenville, South Carolina. You're on Ground Zero.
Oh, thank you, Clive, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, earlier you were talking about the Gwen Towers and Elf Towers and the cell phone towers that were posing. Well, they're posing as the cell phone towers are posing as Elf and Gwen Towers. And with Wi-Fi and smart meters also, it's amazing that anybody can function, can think, or at least critically think. Currently, we're just being blasted over and over again. And I believe that you mentioned chemtrails. It was last night or tonight, I can't remember.
Well, yeah, I was mentioning chemtrails with regards to how many people have surmised that chemtrails are being used in tandem as markers for the waves being produced by the HAARP project in Alaska. Yeah, well, they're still rocking and rolling down here, man. I thought they would have gone away with as much rain as we've had. But no, they come out and they're still spring, so that's not fun at all. But one of the things that I'm so frustrated about this, why people in the United States of America haven't stood up and said, enough of this. Number one, people really don't understand this. They don't want to know about it. I don't know if that's part of the programming, is not to know about Gwen or Elf Towers or any type of technology like that. If I bring it up, or even a smart meter, people just kind of get a glazed look and, oh, look, there's a rainbow over there. Anything except for what I'm talking about. Well, there are not enough shows on the television that can get people into that mindset to open up and accept these things. They call it programming for a reason. Well,
hardcore.
Yeah, the programming is not such where the mainstream narrative is opening doors to this type of conversation. That's why shows like mine are very unique. And I would say, yes, my show is quite unique in a sense that while other people compare it to other types of shows in the same genre, I think our approach is far more different, and I hope far more intellectual in a sense that, you know, I'm not a crusader to try and bring down government. I'm a person who tries to inform if anyone else out there has the cojones to stand up and do something fine. But in the meantime, we are all in this together. We all need to be informed, and even if it is taking over without any help from people rebelling or doing anything like that, we need to be aware of the changes we're going to be going through, and a lot of these changes are going to be so abrupt and so crazy that many Americans, I don't think, are going to live through it.
Yeah, I don't think that they will either. We have maybe in grocery stores, maybe 2 to 3 days worth of food.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, and if there's ever a problem, 2 to 3 days worth of food goes by. Many people are not mentally equipped to go out and survive, hunt and eat animals that may be in their neighborhoods, like raccoons or squirrels or even dogs and cats. I mean, I know that sounds it sounds bad, but let's face it, in dire situations, Americans are going to have to understand that they have to find ways to live. Otherwise, they'll just have to roll over and die and realize that we've been pampered all this time. In fact, we're going a generation, in fact, many generations, that have not known what it means to live in a depression, nor do they know what it means to live through a real war, not an open-ended war of paranoia and terror that is all made up by your government, but we're talking about a real war with real dangers and real ideals that we want to uphold as Americans. I don't think Americans realize that we've allowed our ideals to become stale and we don't exercise them. And many people believe in this bumper sticker patriotism that thinks they're going to get them through every July 4th or every Christmas or whatever. It just doesn't work that way. You've got to be fully aware of what your Constitution is what is being done to your Constitution, what is being done in the name of your country, and where they're going to put the flag next, and whether or not it's going to be atop a pile of steaming dead bodies that we've wiped out in a drone strike. And I think Americans need to be aware of this.
Yeah, that's something, too, is that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to go to county council meetings. They don't want to go to city council meetings. They don't want to talk about anything that is negative. Anything at all. So the government, and my sister said this a long time ago. I think that she's changed her opinion since, I hope. But she said something to the effect, well, the government, why would the government want to harm us?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Well, there's always that.
Why would the government want to? I was in the military. I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
No.
Well, why would your government want to harm you? That's the dumbest question of the world. I mean, because the government is the government.
Why did they give me Gulf War shots?
Yeah. Well, why did they create the problem with downwinders back when they were testing atomic weapons in the Hanford facility and all this stuff? It's because they just don't think. People just become nameless and they become numbers and statistics, and they all have the opinion, well, they're all going to die somehow or some way. Let it be this way.
Everybody has their time. God has a book, and when it's time to go, it's time to go. But in the meantime, it's still fight for something, stand for something,
right?
And they will come after you if you do talk too much about it.
Well, I wish I could find some direct compensation for how my parents or my mother and her family was exposed to the radiation because of those bombs going off, and the reason why I have cancer and I'm prone to cancer, the reason why I've had 3 operations in 6 years. I sit here and I say to myself, I wish I didn't have to go through this again. I wish I didn't have to go through this again. But you know what? Everybody is going through this now. It's not a matter of if you get cancer, it's a matter of when you get cancer. It just seems like these things are happening. They're happening in epidemic proportions, and the American people are just kind of like writing it off as, well, you get old, and that happens to you. No, people need to understand that we have the entitlement, or at least the ability, to live normal and happy lives without the threat of cancer, without the threat of pain, eating nutritious food without the threat of eating things that are GMO, and being treated with respect and given life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and have those promises kept. But they're no longer kept.
Yeah, and also without having fluoride in your water, you're killing our little brain cells. That and I say little because we have these little brain cells, and they get excited when you drink a certain drink or food, and they explode, and then it's not growing back.
Right. Well, good thing in Oregon where I live, we voted down fluoride, and I think it's amazing. But of course, they want to put it back on the ballot because the selfish morons that think that no means sure. I mean, in my opinion, that's kind of like raping someone in a way.
It is, and we've had this here. We had the best water in the upstate for forever. When I was a child in the 70s and early 80s,
right.
And then of course they were going to the word progress. You know what that means?
Right.
Yeah. So it went downhill from there. And I think that one of the reasons we cannot think here, really, I mean, it looks like it's moving, hopping, a great place to live. Don't move here. Don't. It's corrupt. To the core. It is very corrupt.
I wish that what would stick is when officials are told no, we mean no. And if you do something after we say no, then guess what? You don't have a prayer. And whatever we do after we say no and we decide to fight back is what we do. And if you don't like it, tough. So I would suggest that we need to tough it up and understand that no means no.
Yeah, but for some reason, they flip it on us, and then somehow the citizens are set up some ways that actually have the gall to say something about, I don't like that airplane rolling back and forth with, this chemtrail crap, and I don't like the fact that we're going to have military in the streets. Oh, and then that person's set up, and their life is ruined.
Oh, but there's so many people out there that it says it's for our own good, and they lose all sensibilities when it comes to due process in the courts, and the system's broken, and somebody got an unfair trial and justice for Trayvon, and I tell you, it's all craziness and nuts.
Justice for us too. I mean, justice, heart and soul. I don't want anybody to be, again, as far as people being murdered and harmed and beaten up. No, I do not like violence at all. No. But what about everybody else who has been beaten up?
Justice for everybody. Yes, Brentley. Justice for everybody. I agree with you.
And I know that probably sounds a little idealistic. I thought I was beyond that. Apparently not. But I live in Peter.
There's nothing wrong with being idealistic. I mean, it's good. It makes me realize that there are people out there that do have hope and optimism, and that we're not stuck in a rut. I'm still an optimist, even though I do talk about a lot of doom, but I really believe that we can pull out and do better. Hey, I got to run. Take care, Brentley. You have a great night.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. God bless.
You bet. God bless. Bye. 888-673-3700. More of your phone calls coming up. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
FM News 101 KXL.
You're listening to Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
This is not a test. It is the future. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
The prevailing opinion of the architects of all of this nonsense, they just think American citizens are too fat, too unhealthy. They're too tender and absolutely too expensive to maintain. Therefore, something needs to be done to get rid of them. We do have the burden of the older population, of the baby boomers, now on all the medical situations that are going on in the world, and I'm sure that's going to be taken into consideration. I worry about that generation, really. Because I know that there are things that are part of this full spectrum dominance where human beings get in the way. Much like in the beginning of the program where I talked about Agent Smith being a representative for the new machines that are agents of good. He said in a speech in The Matrix that human beings are disease or a plague on the planet. And all they do is they multiply and multiply and multiply. And when they're through in one space, consuming everything they have around them, they move to another place and do the same thing over and over and over again. And then comes the great speech when he has Neo down on the tracks of where the train's coming, and he says, "That, Mr. Anderson," well, let's do my best, Agent Smith. He goes, "Mr. Anderson, what you're hearing is inevitability. What you're hearing is your own death." And that, my dear friends, is the attitude of the powers that be. It's inevitable. And they want to even control that. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL.
More with Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero on FM News 101.
A nation without a vision of what the future can be is bound to repeat past errors over and over again. This brief video will outline a vision designed to avoid old mistakes. A vision of efficiency, sustainability, and intelligent planning can lead us into a marvelous new world of unlimited human potential. Designing the future.
While it inhabits its own silent world that no man can penetrate. No one is safe from its spell of destruction. A cold, hypnotic stare striking fear into the hearts of all, creating a frenzied nightmare for those who behold it.
The cloud is splitting up. There are 4 of them now, and all moving this way.
I say there are things better left unsolved.
Who knows what waits for us in nature's no man's land?
Impossible, unbelievable, fantastic. But I tell you, it could happen. It could happen. It could happen. It could happen.
Yes, it could happen. For various authorities believe.
What astounding technical developments are being made to protect mankind. Unsuspected revelations of incredible horrors that will terrify you with their brutal reality.
There is no escape from me. Very well. I will recalculate. Your death will be indescribable. Fool humans, there is no escape.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You're listening to Ground Zero. The numbers are called by 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Take a look at Stu. He's on tonight. Strasburg, Pennsylvania. You're on Ground Zero. Go ahead, Stu.
Hey, Clyde. Any of this Purple Heart, don't know how you do it. Anybody else, Breitbart or Hastings or even Tim Russert, anybody that speaks the truth is silenced and not heard. And you know where that comes from.
Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to talk about was when your lady was on there, I didn't get the name because you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, and I'm listening to AM. I didn't get her name, but people not believing chemtrails and some of these other things, poison, GMO foods, or whatever it may be, or even something more advanced where we in this country have possibly stepping off troops. And the reason why I say this is a radio announcer in Western Pennsylvania talks about it. But I had an incident that happened one night where a plane flew over, and it flew over so low that I thought that plane was going to crash. And when I looked out, this plane lit up the tops of trees that were 100-foot tall trees. And I'm pretty astute and cognizant aircraft and flight patterns and so on. This plane continued to fly, and it flew over a populated area, circled around, and came back over my property. And again, lit up these 100-foot tall trees, so that made that plane maybe 500 feet in elevation. And I called the police and asked the police what was going on. Seemed to me like there was something wrong with the pilot or something wrong with the plane for it to fly that low. Police answered me. They didn't know, but they had other calls. So this plane made several passes over this property and over this town at that same elevation, which seems pretty irregular. I mean, for it to do that, flying over a populated area at a low elevation. I don't even think FAA allows it. The second time I called the police, the answer was military maneuvers. And my first thought when I saw that plane was, I'm going to see parachutists jumping out of this plane. Red Dawn. I looked that plane up later on. It was a 4-prop plane. It was white in color. Looked like an airliner, but it had 4 props. And when I looked it up on the computer, it looked like a Russian airliner or a Russian plane. So when people don't believe that things are going awry in this country, they better listen a little closely, because our forefathers are screaming right now.
Yeah, they're screaming loud. And you know, it's funny because, Stu, you know as well as I do that, you know, we can report things like, for example, where you are in Pennsylvania and how you saw that aircraft flying over and you thought, what the hell's going on? But that's just one part of the country. The country's huge. And so if people are not directly affected by things like low-flying planes, black helicopters, urban warfare drills, maybe seeing Russian troops within our borders, they tend to say, well, I didn't see it, so it's not real. I live in this area. And but the thing is that, you know, we live in America, but we don't see all of America. We don't know of the poverty. We don't know where, you know, people live that are having problems. We don't know all of it. We just know what's around us within any 10, 15-mile radius. After that, we don't care. And that's the thing, is that, you know, something that you reported like that, like what you were talking about with the plane, you know, people will say, yeah, okay, well, that guy just happened to see a plane, or that person just happened to see a black helicopter. I've never seen it, so therefore it's not a problem. No, it is a problem. And until you see it, until you're a part of it, you may not relate. But I'm telling you, things are happening. You're right. And people need to pay attention to those little things that may be out of place, or, you know, they say, see something, say something, but people hardly say anything.
Well, I got another story if you want to hear it.
Quickly, yeah.
Very similar. Opened my eyes. Sitting by a stream with my dog in the summertime, boiling hot, and my dog and I are relaxing there along the creek. Fishermen are coming down the creek. I get into a conversation with these guys that are fly fishing and asked them how it was. Noticed they had an accent. And I said, where are you from? And they said either Czechoslovakia, some communist country is where they came from, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia. And basically they said they had come over here 25 years ago and left a communist country. And they were irate. They told me that now this country is worse than the country that they left.
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of Romanians. There are a lot of Romanians that were fighting against Ceausescu, and they say that this is the same. It's almost it's frightening.
It was eye-opening because it wasn't another American. It was somebody that had first-hand experience with communism, socialism, and they see it here in America. And all people have to do is look up Charlotte Iserby. She worked under Reagan. Reagan put her in charge of education. She looks into it. She goes back to Reagan and says, we're merged with Russia's school system. It's all communism. Charlotte Iserby from Bremen, Maine.
Well, the isms are upon us, and yes, the dreaded C, communism, is something that we're definitely on our paving the road to. Despotism, though, seems to be what I'm seeing. So we'll see what happens with that. Stu, great calls. Thank you so much for calling in tonight.
Well, Purple Heart goes out to you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your dedication and your support. I love you. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye. Let's go down to, we got Regina calling in from Fort Smith, Arkansas. You're on Ground Zero.
Hello there. How are you doing tonight?
Good.
Good. There's been such a menagerie on your show tonight, which is excellent. We all didn't know everything we can. And you was talking about the Illuminati, and I asked you, how do you get their names? I have a lot of names, but they don't, you say the Illuminati. I mean, I got George Soros, Warren Buffett, Bill and Melinda Gates, Bloomberg. These are all in here to take over. And I've been asking people if they could do me a favor, because I'm just one. But George Soros has a lot of organizations, And they need to check on how many organizations has paid their Democrat senators, because they own most of them. That's the reason you can't get legislation passed. It's blocked. And the president does his executive orders out of that. That's how come we're in such bad shape right now.
Well, you also have Republican senators that are basically writing our rights away and creating John McCain, Graham, all those guys.
John McCain, and the NBAA. I was wanting the VA to look up on him. He's been taking money from the George Soros finances since 2001, but I've tracked him back from 1995 with the Lighthouse. They ought to check in on him.
Yeah.
And Lindsay. It's not just the Democrats, except they're the most of it right now because they hold them. But it's try some of them established Republicans we got in here.
Yeah.
They'll curl your hair.
It's the enablers that bother me. They're all enabling of this new, well, I don't know, New World Order or whatever you want to call it. They're enabling it, and the American people believe that their parties are all, got the right answers. But you know what? Many members of their parties are just enabling this crisis to continue. And I think that people like you, Regina, who call out those parties that do these things, I think we need more of you in the world.
I think we need a third party, because the new ones that were sent up there, the Republicans in 2010 that had the guts, balls, and something else, every time they get up there and they get around them evil little bastards, they end up down underneath or something.
Right.
It's like it wears off on them. And we ought to have a recall, a real recall. When they say, you're not voting the way we want to, we just grab them up by the pants and bring them home. Right now they're all mad because they all come home. They need to be home. They don't need to be in that pit of hell up there in D.C. I said if they just level it out. And that makes me mad again. $1 billion, $4 million, $1 billion, $4 million to support that White House last year. That party house. They ought to detox them all and shut the doors. But he won't let our people in because that might let them see what's going on. No, what happened is the plantation owner took the White House as a plantation and is keeping the common people out.
Regina, I got to tell you something. You keep talking this way, somebody's going to nominate you for president.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. If I had my way, we'd have one of those little established presidents, We tell him, if you write an executive order, we'll break your leg.
Hey, I got to tell you, I'm out of time, but, don't stop calling my show. I love you. I love you. I love your attitude.
No, what we need is to get a lot of people have been told, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist, We're not racist. It's been programmed in us. Get up, get some balls. Get off your ass and get on your feet. Go after the little bastards. The only thing that's going to kill this place is fear. They've already divided us. So you're going to have to stop the fear and face the stuff and grab people that's like you, And as far as taking our guns away, I don't have it. And if I draw one, I'll use it, period. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Regina?
But if they take your guns away, you'll be like them over in Greece throwing cabbage. So you have a great night, sweetheart, and I'm glad to talk to you.
Glad to talk to you, too. Thank you so much. What a great call from Regina. 888-673-3700. 888-673-3700. A lot of calls to get to. Hopefully we get to all of them. We'll be back.
FM News 101 KXL. More with Clyde Lewis on FM News 101.
This is not a test. It is the future. Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis.
Go to Robert in Georgia. Robert, hi, you're on Ground Zero.
Yes, sir. Glad to get a hold of you. First time caller. Okay, listen, I agree with everything y'all are saying. Man, this is unbelievable, okay? Well, I told you guy earlier, okay, we're down here in South. I was born in Compton, South Central LA. My old man, which is my stepdad, he come out of Hood River, Oregon, okay? He was a designer engineer for Vandenberg out there, General Dynamics. He came to Lockheed. He was designing ICBMs for the Cold War, blah, blah, then he came to Lockheed, okay, and everything. That's kind of where we wound up back here in Georgia. Okay, a lot of people go back to the colonial days, all this, okay. But we have 3 paramilitary camps down here in the South, okay. Our major one's up under the Cherokee Nation. The 3 nations is Cherokee, Sioux, and Southwestern Plains, all the tribes, blah, 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 okay. And the government has been on our case here lately really bad. I mean, we've seen the drones. They're trying to get all the surveillance they can. See, back when we had Rudolph stashed up in the hills, they were really on our case, and they were paying us $20, $25 an hour to go in and flush them out from the ATF, the FBI, all those fools. Okay, and so I agree with everything y'all have said tonight. I mean, just like you say, you know, you'd be surprised what you'd eat. You'd eat bugs if you had to, you know, when it comes down to it and everything, okay?
Exactly.
Right? And it's just incredible, everything, you know, you're talking about Orson Welles, you're talking about, you know, the Matrix, all this. This is incredible, man. We've known this, you know, the robotics, you know, of human flesh. Well, I mean, in them, it was napalm, it was Agent Orange, it was rice gas, you know, the chemicals, the whole 9 yards, you know, this whole thing, it's just coming. It's unbelievable how it's just unfolding before our very eyes and how naive and gullible the average American people are in this country, you know, of what the government is really coming down on our case about, you know. And like you said, it's not just Democrats, not just Republicans, it's the whole 9 yards of how this government is getting ready to unfold this country. You know, we're going, like you said, isms. We're going communism. You know, we're in socialism. We're, you know, socialism, fascism, and communism. You know, this is incredible, man. I wish you people could just really get it out to the people. I wish they would listen and understand what we're going down to.
Well, be my biggest supporter and start shouting from the rafters that the show is on and that you can listen.
We do, but they just pass us off as kooks and nuts.
Oh, no. You're not a kook. You're not a nut. In fact, I think you're very coherent. I think with your enthusiasm, we can get some stuff done this way. So, Robert, you know, you do that, and please, don't be a stranger to my show. I got to go to other calls. Thank you so much for calling tonight, buddy.
We really appreciate you, man. I mean, this is incredible. The first time I ever listened to you, you know, and y'all threw my TV out and everything. I don't know.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for calling in tonight. Let's go to Brooke quickly in Milwaukee, Oregon. Hi, you're on Ground Zero. Brooke, are you there? Go ahead, quickly. You're on Ground Zero. You haven't got much time. Go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to tell you that God bless you for doing what you do, as well as I'm very happy that you got out of recovery and you're on your way.
Oh, thank you, man.
But I also wanted to tell you that, hey, I'm 31. We're young people that are starting to listen to you. You're gaining a lot more credibility than we're seeing things happen that you were talking about a couple years ago. And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of credit.
I love the fact that we've got young people listening as well as older people. We got a great spectrum, and I think that the younger demos that I've got, I mean, they know what's going on, and we're trying to, and they're the ones that are going to be the action guys. They're the ones going to go out and get that message out there. And so, Brooke, I really appreciate you calling in and giving us that support.
Absolutely, it's us that we're the silent, you know, we're the watchdogs. We're the ones that when stuff hits the fan, we're the ones who people are going to turn to.
That's right.
We're the facts.
Because you're capable, and you'll be able to do a lot more of the pushing and the pulling, and you'll get more action done. That's what the youth for action, age for wisdom. I'm not so sure about the wisdom part, but you guys do the best. So, Brooke, I thank you for calling in.
Thank you much, sir.
Take care, buddy. And Mike, quickly, close us out. You got 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Mike in Tennessee.
Me?
Yes, you got about 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I was pondering what happens after the end game if we win. And you got suburbs that just keep on growing and growing until that's all that's left is suburbia and farmland. And then we use up all the resources, and then what?
Well, then we just find more ways to improve our lives. Technologies and all kinds of things used for our best interest rather than using them for a militarized reason. Mechanized death is not something that we want. We don't want drugs that kill us. We want fresh water. We want good food, and we want to be out of pain. That is the goal. If we can do that as a country... What's that?
I see a dead end at the end of that one road there.
Well, I see a dead end at the end of the NWO, too, a dead end of slavery and also being a part of a global court and a global law. I mean, this is something that, take away your sovereignty. I mean, people want the collectivism. I say individuality. Individuals have power. Individuals have discretion. We all need to remember that we are individuals and that there are these other collectives we want to be a part of, but please remember, being an individual is what makes this country great, and everything that you do makes a difference. Mike, I see optimism if we all start thinking outside of the box. You're the man. Thank you for calling in tonight. It's a great show. Thank you, Deborah Tavares, for being on the program. Join us tomorrow night for another hard-hitting show. We are Ground Zero. We're number one, and we thank you for it. Good night.
Bye.